This is Ryan.
And Julia.
And together, for the first time, we are functionally literate.
Yes, we are. I'm so excited to be here. I schemed my way onto this podcast, I think.
So, Julia, tell the audience how you know me.
Well, we just did a show together. We were in the Crucible at Maplewood Barn.
Yeah.
And you played Hale. I played Elizabeth Proctor.
Yeah, I played Reverend Hale, and you were Proctor. You were Elizabeth Proctor.
I was Proctor.
You were a Proctor.
It was a lot of fun.
You were good wife Proctor.
I was Goody Proctor. And we
hit it off. I was telling you about the podcast, and you were like, "I'd love to read a book with you." And I was like, "Pick a book." And then
you picked a book.
Well, you had some suggestions, and then I made this suggestion to you, and you said, "This is a great book. I love this suggestion. Let's do this." You could have said no.
No, this was a great suggestion, and I was really excited to read it. I mean, I had heard about this author before, so just like getting to dive into one of these is
we should tell the audience what this is.
We are reading Go Dog Go, or that's not even the name of it, sorry.
We are reading the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This is book 1 of the Broken Earth trilogy. I have read a couple of her books before.
I didn't realize that, I don't think. That you have read her books before.
I don't think I mentioned it.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So I've read, not on here, but I've read, there's a book that she did called The City We Became. It's really cool. It's about, so basically in that book, like, cities can come alive eventually.
Ooh.
Once they've been around long enough. So it's about New York, right? Like, and the way cities come alive is someone who lives in that city becomes like an avatar of the city, right? And they get a bunch of like abilities and powers, and they're essentially like demigods, basically. And they can leave their city, but they usually don't, right? And so with New York, like the last city that came alive, I believe it was Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, their avatar comes to New York to kind of like train up the avatar that is going to, like, the person that will become the avatar of New York. Okay. But then something goes wrong, and then there's 6 avatars, right? There's like the main avatar, and then there's an avatar for every single borough, and the main avatar goes missing.
Where is the main avatar?
That's a good question.
You're like, read the book, find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that was a duology, and it was really, really good. And so I thought this book, the 5th season, would be good for this podcast because, you know, Zach and I, we've been covering like mythology because we're gearing up to do swords and sorcery. And this isn't quite swords and sorcery. This is, I looked it up. This is science fantasy.
It's dystopian. Yeah. For sure. Mm-hmm. I read a lot of fantasy. I read a lot of like fluffier fantasy, we'll say, I guess. And so this is like a fun shift for me to read. I mean, and I've read, you know, a little bit more highbrow fantasy like this, if you will.
Sure.
This is it's a good shift, and it is a heavy.
It is heavy.
Heavy book.
It starts heavy.
Yeah, and it starts confusing. For me.
So I think you and I had the same experience where we listened to the audiobook.
Yes.
And so while it sounded beautiful, it was hard to follow as an audiobook. It's
poetic, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But you went back and read the prologue again, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I did that too.
I read it as text, so that way I could reread it and follow it a little bit better, which I think was to my benefit.
Yeah, and that helped me for sure. There were some things that I just like still was like, what's going on? But that's like any fantasy book that you start, right? So like, you know, the first 50 pages, you're like, not sure what's going on at all, but I believe I will understand in due time.
Yeah. So for posterity, we are going to be recording 3 episodes today.
Yeah.
So for this episode, we're going to do Prologue and chapters 1 and 2. But we're going to be today reading up to chapter 8. So I listened to the Prologue up through chapter 8 a couple times.
Wait, did you really?
I did.
That's wild.
I mean, it was mainly because I knew I wasn't going to be able to take very good notes.
Okay.
Because, it's summer, and so I'm doing a different job right now, and I'm not just sitting at my desk waiting on people to come into the building.
Okay, so you had the time to do it, and I read this all in one day.
You did, which I thought was impressive, because I definitely did not do that.
I knew I was like, I love to bench read books. Like, that's just my cup of tea, so.
Yeah, I get you. I've done that. I haven't done it very often lately.
It's not always great for, like, processing, though, like, because afterwards you're like, what did I just read? So I definitely had to go back, like, read the summaries and also reread a few parts.
So this book has an appendix.
Yes.
Well, it has 2 appendixes, technically, which I find are useful. So the first appendix it talks about all of the 5th seasons that this like empire in the book have recorded, and then the second appendix is just like terminology that is in comes up a lot in the book that are not real terms,
right?
Which I also found useful. So a 5th season, for all of you, it is a extended winter that lasts at least 6 months that is caused by seismic activity or some other large-scale environmental impact that kind of screws everything up for everybody. It's an apocalypse.
Right.
A 5th season is an apocalypse. And so it's interesting because that essentially makes everyone in this world a doomsday prepper.
Yes, 100%. That's such a good way to put it. Oh my god. They're all struggling.
They
too.
are. Yeah. Do you want to get into that a little bit? How they're doomsday preppers?
I mean, well, there's no certainty for any of them. Like, there's, 2 quakes. Like, when's that gonna happen next? And who is behind it, or who can we blame?
Let's get into the prologue.
Okay.
Prologue. The world ends in 3 ways. So this is one hell of a prologue.
Woof, it is.
Yeah.
I definitely, like I said, I had to reread it. And this is the only notes truly that I took before I gave up.
What do you got?
I mean, so a woman, Isun, right?
Asun,
sorry.
No, it's fine. That I only know that because that's how the narrator pronounced it.
Right. And so she starts, and she is grieving a child.
Yeah.
It starts off heavy immediately.
Baby boy is dead.
Yeah,
and all she can think, and the narration says that she thinks this a lot over the course of the book. She keeps thinking whenever she thinks of her son, but he was free, followed by, but he wasn't, not really, but now he will be.
Yeah.
And I wonder about that. How was he free before, and how is he free now?
It definitely, I was like, it's giving, what's this after? Is there an afterlife situation that we're going to learn about?
That's
Did you go there at all, or no?
Did I go to an afterlife thing?
Yeah.
I didn't, because nobody in this book is, at least up to chapter 8.
Nobody's mentioned it.
Yeah, nobody's mentioned an afterlife of any kind.
I know, but what? I don't know. Okay.
No, that's fine. What were you thinking?
No, I will say I didn't get so stuck on that, but I did, it in my mind triggered a little bit of a church freedom in the afterlife, and I'm
okay, sure.
particularly religious, but like just in like maybe how she was like phrasing it, I was like, this is interesting.
I get you.
I don't know. But it's a gnarly world they're in, so
It is. And so then they
freedom from not being there.
So then like I love the way the book starts with like the first sentence. It's like, all right, let's talk about the end of the world, shall we? Let's get it out of the way and get on to more interesting things. And it's like, you know, most books would say that the end of the world is the most interesting thing. Most.
Right. But no, it's the story within, right?
Right. And so after talking about Aesun a little bit, it talks about just the world itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the people in this world, they call it the Stillness, which is kind of a misnomer because it's not still at all. I think that's like...
It's very unstill.
I think they call it that because that's what they want it to be.
Right. Shaky.
So yeah, it's a supercontinent. It's another Pangea.
Mm-hmm.
It is... and there's even a map in the beginning of the book that
I love when they do that.
Yeah.
I don't always, I'm like, I'm going to never refer to this again, but I'm going to look at it right now, and I'm going to appreciate it.
Yeah. And so I found that helpful because, I mean, it is almost entirely one supercontinent. There's a few islands here and there around the continent, but not many. There's like, I don't know, maybe 8 islands. I didn't count them.
And then you have the equator, right?
Yeah.
Stable cities.
All of the stable cities all the big cities are along the equatorial line, is what they call it. Yeah. Which makes sense, you know? I mean, I think there is some science to that. I'm not going to look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure the equator is one of the most seismically stable places in the world.
I can't speak on that at all.
I can't speak on that either, but I know that the author did some scientific research with this. Like, so that's what I was wanting to get into with science fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, what the hell does that mean? Because sci-fi is an offshoot of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked it up, and it is a merging of fantasy and science fiction.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so science fiction was an offshoot, and then it was merged back for this genre of science fantasy.
Interesting. I didn't know the difference between that.
I didn't know that was a genre at all until like I was looking this book up on Wikipedia.
Okay. I love that. That's great.
But yeah, so the book kind of gets into how the Stillness is this supercontinent. And so I had a question actually for you. Speculation.
Okay.
Right? So do you suppose the Stillness is Earth in the far future or another planet?
I didn't to me, I don't even think I considered it to be a part of this universe.
Okay.
Like, to me, this is all happening in another dimension,
This is a totally different thing. This is a different thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily, but if it's, science fantasy, it would maybe it makes more sense that it would take place on Earth, or maybe it's giving Dust Bowl vibes, in terms of I feel there's lots of grime and dirt and with the way she describes everything.
Yeah.
So maybe it's on Mars or something.
There's a moment where she gets into how the whole continent is just littered with ruins of long ago cities and bridges and statues and monuments, like a bunch of crap from before this empire, which is roughly 2,700 years old, I believe they said, something like that. And how the people of the Stillness don't give a crap about any of that stuff.
Right.
The current wisdom, if you can call it that, of the Stillness is everything that came before doesn't matter because all of those people failed to survive. We've succeeded. Look at us. We're an empire.
Oh, yeah. They're thriving. Truly.
And so, yeah, it talks about the capital of the Stillness of the Empire, which is a place called Eumenis. And it talks about how Eumenis is a city of bravery, right? Because they don't give a fuck about the fact that an earthquake could shatter everything. They're going to build all of these things that, we would build, right? Like asphalt roads and balconies and precarious buildings.
Are you talking about California or like?
I'm not, but that is a good comparison.
Just saying, like.
Well, I don't think even California deals with things quite on the level that the Stillness does.
100% no.
Yeah.
but we're not gonna fall apart, and we're definitely not gonna break off and sink into the ocean.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yeah, no, so it goes on about Eumenis and like all of these things about it, like a lot of flavor, right? And then it's like, none of this matters.
I know. And then we start talking about
this
Stone
guy.
Eaters.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the Stone Eater.
Yeah.
And the guy talking to the Stone Eater.
Yep.
So there's a guy, and they don't really explain who the guy is, but he's talking to this woman. I'm using quotation marks here because she just presents herself as a woman.
Right.
She's like, what was she made out of?
Oh God.
I don't even remember.
I don't either.
She was made out of like some kind of white marble or something. And she looked like a very realistic woman. And they're talking about, the end of the world, basically, right? Like, this guy's going to cause the end of the world. She doesn't think that it's really going to cause the end of the world. He's like, what are you guys going to do after we're all gone? And she's like, you're not going to be all gone. You're going to survive. And he doesn't believe that for a second. And he wouldn't.
Right. And this is like where, too, I think this was probably the most confusing aspect for me.
Which makes sense. I don't think it's supposed to make sense right now.
I'm like, where this, it's just lore, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like setting the stage.
And they have a power.
The Aura genes. Or are you talking about the Stone Eaters?
The Stone Eaters, right? And they destroy
Eumenis?
Eumenis.
Yeah. Well,
did I jump ahead too quick?
I don't think so. But she didn't do anything. She was just there. She was just witness.
Right.
He, with his vast power, takes the world and the sky and everything under the earth, or at least everything, like whatever tectonic plate he's currently on, and he takes it and he breaks it. He just, with his vast, huge, earth-shattering Poseidon powers, just breaks the world. And and that's
as one does.
And and that's it. And that's how the world ends. This guy is like, fuck all of y'all. Fuck this society. I hate this. This all sucks. Everyone's gonna die, and it's gonna be fine. We don't deserve this world.
But it doesn't destroy everything.
No. What does it do?
It doesn't destroy. Another word, like me going through and trying to say the names of these cities.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Which one?
Tirimo, Tirimo.
Tirimo, right. Yeah.
See, I'm telling you. That's the beauty of an audiobook, though, because you listen to it and you hear
and then you know.
And then you know, and then if you're me, you immediately forget.
When you're online, that's how you can tell the difference between people that listen to the audiobook versus people that read the book. Because, like, people that listen to the audiobook, they know how to pronounce everything, but they don't know how to spell shit.
And then people who have listened to the audiobook 3 times.
really know how to pronounce things.
Which is good. Which is great.
Let me be clear, I only listened up to chapter 8 3 times.
I know. But it's still impressive.
Okay, thanks.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not everything was destroyed. Because Asun, while she was mourning her son, those sheiks reached Torimo and she saved it. Like, kind of instinctually.
Right.
Although I think that's a chapter 1 thing.
Yeah. I mean, and do we talk about the Roga now?
Raga.
See? Oh, I thought I had that one, too.
Raga come up in the prologue.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to talk? So...
But that's, like, kind of a slur.
It is absolutely a slur.
That's... So...
Like, in the appendix, there's a definition for orogene.
Don't cancel me.
I'm not
I'm just
not canceling you. It's a book.
I know. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, no. There's in the appendix. There's a definition for orogene, and at the end, which it says derogatory, or raga.
Yes. Which, oh man, I can't. This is what's going to be challenging is like not jumping to like other chapters.
You'll get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like I'm like, oh.
It'll get easier. So yeah, after this guy who we don't know who he is breaks the world, the narrator kind of gets into shifts to Asun, right? It talks about Asun. Asun is 42. She's tall. She's straight-backed. She's long-necked. And this is something that I thought was interesting. With hips that easily bore 2 children and breasts that easily fed them. And that stuck out to me because I'm used to reading fantasy written by men. And I have never once heard a man describe a woman's body in such a desexualized way. It was refreshing.
It's great. Let's read more fantasy books written by women.
We're here for it. Yeah, and so her skin is either ochre brown or olive pale, depending on what standard you go by, which I take that to mean, like, people in the Stillness are racist, but, like, in different ways, depending on where you're from. And so they're like, some people are like, she's too pale, and other people are like, she's too dark.
Yeah,
it's like, this is bullshit. But yeah, her son, his name was Uche. He was almost 3, and his father killed him.
Yes.
Which we know someone who we talked to this book about a little bit. She said that she could not get past the prologue because it's like, no, I can't read a book that starts with a dead kid. I just can't do it.
And I think that that's totally fair.
I agree.
And especially even when you get into like chapter 1, like you're like, oh, this is going to be
intense.
I think, and I said this to you earlier, I was like, this is a book that I have a feeling is going to destroy me mentally.
Right. Yeah.
But in a good way, in a way of like, I mean, not good because it's very sad, but
well written.
Yes, exactly, and in a story that I'm 100% on board for.
Yeah.
To find out where it takes me.
So yeah, it talks about this woman Asun, and it talks about the people of Torimo. There are scouts that examine kind of what's going on. They go to like the last remaining high road leading out of their town. And they observe, like, the valley that they're in. They see, like, all the mountains are fucked up. The northern part of the valley is fucked up. Everything else in, like, a perfect circle around them is fine. And I would think that would be good, right? It's like, oh, good, we've been saved. But they don't think this is good, because they know exactly what this means. They know that a Raga is here.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
Because they're so dangerous.
Right.
Which...
I mean, yes.
They are dangerous, but misunderstood, I want to say.
I agree. It's like, because of how powerful they are, like at birth, how powerful they are, everyone that isn't an origin fears them
Right.
and wants to kill them.
And you know that because, well,
Aesun's dead.
yeah.
Not Aesun.
Uche, yeah.
Uche's dead. Aesun is very
From-
sad that Uche's dead.
Yeah.
And so these scouts, like, they wander off. You know, they were sent out to collect as many dead animals as they could for meat and for hides and stuff, which, you know, very doomsday prepper.
Oh, there we are.
And then when, you know, and because they left in such a hurry, they missed something. They didn't see this, like, geode egg thing.
Yes. And then they eat it.
The kid, yeah, a kid comes out of the geode egg thing, passes out when he wakes up.
Hatching.
Yeah, he hatches out of the egg. He passes out. He wakes up. He collects a ton of crystals from the geode. He eats one, and then after he eats it, he realizes how cold he is, and it's a terrible thing to be cold. So yeah, he collects all of these crystals and wanders off. And then I love the ending, right? Because it talks about how the world's going to be fine. You know, when people talk about the end of the world, it's a lie. The planet is going to be fine.
Yeah.
The people are going to die. And then it ends with, it reminds me of, what was it called? I think it was The Wicker Man or something. You know, like, this is the way the world ends. Repeated 3 times. And the final time in italics, this is the way the world ends. For the last time. It's like, man, that's so fucking good.
I gotta read this line, because it's good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, this is what you must remember. The ending of one story is just the beginning of another.
Yeah.
Which is what you said, but I just...
No, I skipped that bit of it, yeah.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful. Now we're on to chapter 1.
Yeah.
You, at the end of the world, in which you become a middle-aged woman with a dead son at the end of the world as the Empire knows it. The local doctor takes you in for a few days before you endeavor to find your husband and daughter.
This is where things started to make sense for me.
Yeah.
I was like, I can follow this story officially. And I immediately, on the first page of chapter 1, underlined something that got me very excited.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, like, in fantasy world, like, there are plenty of, like, queer fantasy books.
Yeah.
But it's not, like super, I mean, there is tons of them, but, like, not, I guess what you would say, like, mainstream or what is, like, super popular, if you will.
Are you talking about The Butcher?
Yes, I'm talking about The Butcher. I immediately underlined, I said, the Butcher probably knows your name because she likes to flirt with you. I underlined and wrote in all caps, queer, exclamation point.
Yeah.
And I was very excited.
I liked how casual it was.
Yes, 100%. I was like, this is great. And I just knew we were in such good hands.
I liked the way this chapter opened, right?
Yeah.
You are her. She is you. You are Aesun. Remember? The woman with the dead boy, or however it goes.
The woman whose son is dead, yes.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because, like, whenever this book focuses on Aesun, you are her.
Yes.
You are Aesun.
And you're in it immediately.
It is second person narrative, which is interesting because I've never encountered that before in this kind of book. Have you?
Never. This has never happened.
Never.
No. And so, like, but a genius way to get people immediately invested.
Oh, yeah.
Make it about them. Like,
absolutely. It's like, hey, you are now this woman.
I'm in the journey now.
Indeed.
And I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I've only encountered second person in a couple places.
Okay.
In those Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Oh, throwback. I never read those.
Never.
Full disclosure. But I know a lot of people who have.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember those. And then also there's this podcast, Welcome to Night Vale.
I've heard of that.
It's really good.
And I didn't listen to it.
That's okay. But it has some episodes where it's a story about you. And then the voice of Night Vale proceeds to narrate this whole story about you. And so this felt a lot like that, only less absurdist, because Night Vale's very absurdist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we know about us?
Well, that something catastrophic has just occurred.
Yeah.
And we've got refugees that are coming in.
Yeah.
And that our son is dead.
And we know our husband killed him.
Yes. Jija?
Jija.
Okay.
And we know this because on his body, on Uche's body, are fist, like bruising in the shape of fists that were like the size of his hands.
Yeah.
Like when I listened to it as an audiobook, I had like some doubt. I was like, do we know it was Jija? Do we know that? But then when I was rereading it, it was like, oh no, this is pretty unquestionable, isn't it?
Right.
This is I don't want to believe that he did it because I don't want to believe that a father would kill his son.
Yes. And it's so sad too. I mean, and she mentions, and I believe this is in chapter 1, she mentions how he's never been violent before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that talks to the fear and the, what is the word I'm looking for here? Just the atrocious feeling that they have towards like people like Uche,
You mean like that embedded
hatred
yeah.
and fear.
Yeah.
Because they're like, what destruction are you going to cause?
Right. Because it's very easy for an Origine to lose control.
Right.
If they're not trained. Which is, I mean, they do get trained, like, when they're discovered. And
they could be.
They could be.
That's one option.
It is one option. We'll get into that. So yeah, what we know about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived in Torimo for a decade. We're educated, well enough to be a middle school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
We have a flirty relationship with the butcher,
which we love.
The baker doesn't like us. Our husband was born here. We one day coming home find our son dead in the living room. And our husband is gone, and our daughter is gone, and we know our husband killed our son because of the bruising on him. And we don't handle the death of our son well. We shut down.
I mean, totally reasonable response.
I would shut it. Ryan, would shut down too.
I would either shut down or I would burn the entire city to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both are reasonable.
Both are reasonable, for sure.
And we are discovered, right?
Yeah, so
she's been this is like disturbing in some aspects. Like she has been in this home
for
with
2
her
days.
son, with her with his corpse, and is found by the doctor.
Lerna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he breaks into the house.
Mm-hmm.
He comes to us and sees everything and understands almost everything about the situation the moment he walks in.
Well, because Lerna knows what they are.
Yeah.
And he's like one of the only.
Yeah, it's because in the beginning of the chapter, it makes clear that only 3 people in all of Torimo know who Aesun is, and 2 of them she gave birth to.
Right.
Lerna's the 3rd.
Yeah.
I thought it was the husband until Lerna came into the picture.
And so maybe I just like missed this. Do we know how he knows that she is
Lerna?
Yeah, how Lerna knows that that like Ucha and Isan are Origin?
I don't think it's explicitly stated, but I would assume that it had to come up
as a doctor.
Yeah.
The annual checkup. How's it going? I've noticed something about you.
Yeah. And so, Lerna, he sees Uche, like he takes the blanket off to look at him. He puts the blanket back over him, and then we're like, don't do that. He's afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
It's horrible.
Lerna acquiesces. He lowers it just below his eyes.
Yeah.
We're like, thank you. And then Lerna takes us, kind of insistently, but in a gentle way, back to his house.
Which is good. We needed to get out of there.
Yeah, I'm gonna refer to this character as we, because it's us.
No, I do. I love that, and I kept saying she, and so
no, it's us.
It is us. That you're right.
This is our dead son. This is our shitty husband.
Yeah, screw him. Sorry, can I say that?
You can say whatever you want.
Great.
This is an explicit podcast.
Wonderful.
And it kind of has to be with this book.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
This is not for kids. So yeah, we go to Lerna's house, where we are put in a bed with a big gray cat, which makes us sad because the weight is pretty similar to Uche's. That's so sad.
It is so sad.
We really don't want to think consciously about anything right now.
No.
I thought that was interesting, right? Like, careful, we can't think too much.
Right.
You can't think too much. Then, if you think too much, you'll remember what's happening to you.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Disassociating. We are disassociating.
100%.
I think that's okay for right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very shocking. So yeah, we sleep. We wake up. There's some food. And then we go to the bathroom. And the toilet won't flush. This is why I feel like it is Earth. But in the far future.
Yeah.
Because there's things like asphalt. And indoor plumbing. And balconies.
Right. Well, and then she's got to get the hell out of there.
Yeah. So we have a nightmare about the death of our son. And then we have a conversation with Lerna, who Lerna gives us kind of the rundown about like how the town is reacting to this. The town knows about Uche. And not most, but a good portion of the people in town are like, good. Good for you, Jija. Thank you for doing that. It's fucked up.
I know. It is fucked up. And, gosh, is this when... No, I think I'm starting to jump ahead to our next chapter.
Lerna does mention that people saw them leaving, but they didn't see where.
Right.
I believe is what happened.
So Jija has our daughter.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
It's so bad.
Because
I don't know.
And we don't know if Jija knows that she is also an origin.
So
right?
I'm speculating that Jija doesn't know.
Because she wouldn't be alive then.
Right. Like, I feel like that's gotta be the situation.
Like, he would have killed them both.
So the town thinks that our son did all this.
Right.
This pisses Lerna off, because he knows that it started in the capital. It's like, of course, a 3-year-old could cause an earthquake 3,000 miles away. Like, damn, Lerna's pissed. What do you think of Lerna?
I like Lerna.
I do too.
I do, and I think that they're obviously where everybody else has such hatred towards Origin, like
or a Jeans.
Or a Jeans, sorry.
No,
or
fine.
a Jeans. Then they know what's up, because they're not like being they're not discriminating against them.
I think part of that comes down to he had to leave to become a doctor, and then he came back. So he's probably a bit more well-rounded than most.
Educated, maybe.
He's definitely more educated.
And knows maybe what they're capable of and being able to control it. Yeah.
So Lerna he leaves to let our use cast leader know how we are, because there's use casts. So yeah, that's an interesting thing about just like this whole society. And it comes down to like the naming conventions,
Mhm.
right? So you've got your first name, which is your name, and then you've got your use cast name, because there's like 20 different casts, although 7 of them are the more common ones.
Mhm.
So like, for instance, there's strongbacks, which are just laborers.
Right.
And then there's resistants, which I don't know what their deal is. There's breeders, which it's in the name.
Clear.
And then your third name, which is wherever your town, like your comm name, right? So
Mhm.
towns and cities are referred to as comms or communities.
Mhm.
And so your third name is your comm name. So like that's where people's names come from.
Right.
You know. So yeah, so we claimed to be a resistant, whatever that means. So Lerner leaves to go speak with Eran, Eran, E-R-A-N. I don't remember how that name's pronounced, but she's like the spokeswoman for the resistant use cast. So Lerner's also part of that use cast, so he goes to let her know, hey, Asuna's fine. You know, I mean, not fine, but, you know, she's alive.
Right.
And then after he leaves, we resolve that we gotta go.
And we're out of here, and we're gonna go fuck somebody
We're
up.
gonna go fuck somebody up, yeah. And then the chapter ends with a passage from a verse from Stone
Yes.
Lore, so Stone Lore is like, I think the closest thing they have to gospel,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it is stuff that was written down a long, long time ago about how to survive in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty spot on, apparently. Like, this is stuff that you should pay attention to. This is stuff that you should trust.
Right.
Right? Like, the scouts earlier in the prologue, they recalled a bit of Stone Lore about find the center. That is where you will find the origin. Like, if you see, like, just... Like, if there's an earthquake, and then, like, you just have this perfect circle of untouched land.
Wonder what's there.
Right.
Yeah.
But so this one ends with a verse that says, the shake that passes will echo. The wave that recedes will come back. The mountain that rumbles will roar.
Mm.
Tablet 1 on survival, verse 5. What do you think that means?
The shake that passes will echo. God, don't ask me.
Maybe this is like a poetic way of talking about aftershocks and tsunamis and volcanoes.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense. The mountain that rumbles will roar.
I think it's talking about volcanoes.
Yeah, okay, that would make sense.
I mean that's just what I think. What do you think?
I don't know.
Fair enough.
I literally don't know. Like,
Yeah.
some of these I think too, like, after reading the prologue, part of me, I'm like, oh, it's just poetical, and I'm not gonna overthink this at
Sure.
this moment. But I think that everything you said, that makes 100%. Like, aftershock, tsunami, volcano. You're smart cookie.
You know what? I'm gonna credit Zach here because
Okay.
I've been doing this with Zach for a while. He's all about symbolism,
Oh, wow.
so I feel like it may have rubbed off a smidge.
Oh, 100%. And I'm reading, I'm not used to necessarily critically thinking that much.
About it, yeah. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this
Yeah.
podcast in the first place, was because it forces me to critically analyze it.
I know. And I was when I would listen to your podcast, I was like, oh, he thinks about these things before he says it. He doesn't just say it, which is generally my my way about things.
trust
So
me.
this is good for me.
Oh, trust me,
You're
there's-
making me grow.
Thank you, but trust me, there is a lot of me just spouting off random shit. All right, chapter 2. Damaya, in winters past, where the girl Origine Damaya is collected from her bigoted family's barn by Shafa, the guardian. So yeah, this is traditional narrative. This is a third-person narrative. We're focusing on a different character now, Damaya, a little girl who's an Origine who got caught, and her mother, who is awful, locked her up in a barn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That boy had it coming.
that boy did have it coming. That boy was a shit.
Yeah, he was a shit.
So there was a boy who was like, I like how the narrative talks about it, right? It's like Damaya's pretty sure this boy likes her.
Or her friend says that to her.
Oh, is that what it was?
I think so, right?
Oh, it's
Maybe.
I mean, well, one or the other. Close enough. But yeah, so, either Damaya or a friend of Damaya thinks this boy likes her, and she does not like him because he's a shithead. He's doing
mean to her.
He's doing classic shoving you down in the playground, tugging on your pigtail bullshit.
Yeah, we hate it.
Like, hey, little boys, if you like someone, don't hurt them. Like, I've just
growing up hearing that too, you hear the, oh, he's mean to you because he likes you.
That's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
Even if it is true, it's bullshit and he should change his behavior.
100%. And so she just got fed up because he pushed her down into the dirt.
Yeah. He was like, let me cheat on you. And she was like, no. And then he shoves her into the mud and the dirt, and she got pissed off, and she doesn't really get into...
She doesn't kill him.
No, she doesn't kill him. I don't even think she hurts him. Not really.
She just somehow reveals what she is.
She does something that... And we should get into, what orogenes can do.
Right.
So hang on. Because there's a textbook definition.
Oh, perfect. That's what.
So an orogene is one who possesses orogeny, whether trained or not. Orogeny is the ability to manipulate thermal, kinetic, and related forms of energy to address seismic events. So it's really interesting because you can do quite a few different things with it. The most prominent example is quelling earthquakes.
Right.
Or causing earthquakes.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff you can do with it, right? Because you can manipulate kinetic energy. You can make things hot. You can make things cold, right? Like a common way that an orogene can kill someone is to suck all the heat out of the air and just freeze you to death.
Wicked. Just gnarly.
Yeah. So I don't recall, and I'm not sure if you recall either, if the book gets into exactly what Damaya did.
No.
I'm guessing it was something kinetic.
I don't think that they specifically say.
Yeah.
But I got the feeling that he was hurt in some regard.
It's in some way, but not killed.
Right.
Because
they do say that. They're like,
you're lucky you didn't kill him.
Yes.
And you're lucky you didn't kill a family member.
Right.
But yeah, no, so she wakes up Damaya does, in a barn with a scratchy blanket.
Yeah,
from
shitty quilt that is her mom's or something.
Her grandmother's. So she doesn't care that it's shitty. She likes this quilt. And so yeah, she can hear people talking outside the barn. She recognizes that it's her mother, but somebody else she doesn't know. She assumes this stranger, is a child buyer.
Right, and so she doesn't love that.
She doesn't love that. And he
has ice white eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. It describes ice white eyes here, doesn't it? What does it say about ice white eyes?
Oh, I don't have the specific page.
Was that literal? Was it the whole eye is white, or is it?
That's what I was wondering. I mean, to me, I was like, is it a very light blue, or is it just no? I don't know eye terminology.
Let's check the appendix.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in the appendix, but Julia found it.
But what strikes Damaya most are the child buyer's eyes. They're white, or nearly so. She can see the whites of his eyes, and then a silvery gray disc of color that she can barely distinguish from the white, even up close.
So, if this were a cartoon, this man would just have pupils.
Right. Spooky. Spooky.
Yeah.
And he's a big guy.
He's really big, and he's pale.
Almost white.
Mm-hmm.
Is paper pale, yep.
So, I like Shafa. Like, I like him here. Like,
yes, I do too. He has, like, they spend a lot of time describing him. He's like, he's big. He seems like, she's like, okay, this is a child buyer, but he seems gentle.
Yeah.
And, like, comforting.
Yeah.
Like, has just, even with the spooky eyes, I'm like, I trust this man.
The thing that stood out to me, because we hear him talk before we see him, right? When he's talking to Damaya's mother, the two of them, they find the corner of the barn where she's been, defecating.
Right.
She doesn't have a lot of options, so, she poops in a corner and she covers it up with straw, and she feels a little bit ashamed of this when they find it because Damaya's mother is disgusted. Like, I taught her better than this. And I love Shafa's response, which is like, is there a toilet in here? Did you leave her a bucket? Very calmly.
Right.
And she doesn't say a thing. And then Damaya realizes, Mommy's been reprimanded.
Yeah. She's like, this child buyer, where you off to?
No. But yeah, like the way Shafa talks. We don't find out his name until the end of the chapter when he introduces himself to Damaya. But yeah, that's this character's name. His name is Shafa, and Shafa, he's very gentle. He carries himself calmly. He's not an aggressive person in demeanor.
No, definitely not. And I think that Damaya doesn't have a lot of safe people in her life up to this point. And so this is probably like the first person who almost has somewhat of a nurturing presence. So she trusts him.
She trusts him from the start because, like, when they see each other, he's like, "Will you come down?" And like, I like the way that it talks about it because it's like, shoot, I'm blanking. It's like Damaya likes him because he gives the appearance of a choice, even if there isn't really a choice. Right? Like, he doesn't force her down the stairs to the ground floor.
And I think they're both, like, clear on that. Do you think that, like, she realizes she doesn't have a choice, but she doesn't necessarily mind, though?
She wants to get out of here.
Yeah.
She hates her family now.
And they suck, so...
Yeah, they suck. Especially her mom. Like, there was a passage about, like, all of the horrible things her mom said to her, but right before she put her in the barn.
Yeah.
And just, like, how, she lied to them. She's a monster.
She gave her jacket away.
She gave her jacket away to Damaya's cousin.
Yeah.
And because she believes this rumor that Origines are not as susceptible to the cold as other people are.
And it's BS. Obviously.
And I'm pretty sure this is like a parallel to real life, because I'm pretty sure in the past doctors have said, "Oh, black people don't feel cold like the rest of us.
God.
They're fine. Don't worry about it. They don't need coats."
Absolute nonsense.
It is.
And it's sad to just, like, see that this is Damaya's life, and now she has this man who's entered it, and...
Yeah. So she comes to realize that Shafa is a guardian.
Yeah.
Not a child buyer. Very different thing.
A guardian.
So a guardian is also a use cast, but a very uncommon one. So
they're the head cheese in charge.
They are the ones that watch over and train Origines. Go out and collect Origines.
Their parents are supposed to notify the guardians if the guardians can't find them.
Yeah.
If there's an Origine in the area.
Yeah.
Parents don't always do notify.
Yeah. And so Shafa gets into that too, like how really what her parents did, even though she hates them, they handled it in the proper way.
Right.
Right? Like, they notified the authorities, and he got a telegram or something letting him know that Damaya existed and this is where she is.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, it's really fortunate that I saw it when I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been out here for another 2 weeks. And she thinks about that. She's like contemplating the idea of being stuck in this barn for 2 weeks.
It would suck.
Yeah. And he talks about, like, you know, don't judge your parents too harshly, you know, because they could have killed you.
Mm-hmm.
They could have kept you secret. And she's like, well, what would have been so bad about that, keeping me secret? And he says to her, if they had kept you secret and you had been found out, because you would have been found out.
You can't control it. She has no training.
Right. When you would have been found out, your parents would have lost everything. They would have lost their other child. They would have lost their jobs. They would have lost their houses. They might have even been exiled.
Right.
And so they had other things to consider than you. And, you know, this isn't a bad thing for you. We're going to train you up. We're going to make you useful, not just to this town, but to all of the Stillness.
Right.
To the whole empire. Really trying to dress this up. Like, no, this is a good thing. You're going to come with me now.
Yeah.
Let's go. And he does a thing that Damaya doesn't think about, but really stood out to me. Like, even on the first reading, where he puts, like, his hand or a few fingers on the base of her skull.
Yep.
And is like, okay.
Duty first is what he says, I think.
Does he? Yeah, that makes sense. He's like, duty first. And then she's like, what'd you do? And he's like, I've just made it easier for me to find you if you get lost.
You've been microchipped. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, like an like magic low-jacking.
I still, you know, I'm like, okay, Shafa.
All right, man. Okay.
Duty first, he's right. And I will say, too, another thing I loved, in a way, is describing what she is. You are fire, mountain, glass, Dama.
Yeah, so her mom calls her Dama Dama. She
Yeah.
hates that name, but he, I think, a few times just calls her Dama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a gift of the earth.
Yeah. But you've been cursed by Father Earth.
But Father Earth hates us.
Yeah.
Never forget.
Yeah.
It's just, I liked that.
So
whole
that was
message.
something else that I thought was interesting, right? Because in our world, it's Mother Earth.
Yeah.
You know, Mother Nature.
Ugh, it just has to be Father Earth. No, I'm just kidding.
No, well,
it's an interesting point.
I think because of Zach, I'm thinking about the symbolism here.
Yeah.
What does it mean that the representation of the earth is male? Something that in our world is traditionally female.
I mean, what does it say about the society as a whole is
Right.
like the first thing that I go to.
That is exactly where I go to as
Okay.
well. I feel like more so than other societies, we're going to see a lot of like patriarchal supremacy stuff.
And it's in obviously like gendered,
Very
but
much.
it's more than that too. You know, it's within the origin. It's even, I'm gonna.
You were going to say stuff about future chapters, weren't you?
No, I wouldn't.
You would never do that.
I would never
do that. Well, anyway, so yeah, there's a flashback about how Damaya wound up in the barn, which we already discussed.
Yeah.
And then, so there's this thing with the coat, right? Shafa tells, Damaya's mother, you know, go like, you know, make a kit for Damaya for our travel, you know, get her her coat and all that. And her mom is like, oh, we gave away her coat. You gave away her coat? And it's like, well, we're not made of money, you know, like her cousin needed it. And she didn't need it. And Shafa's like, you believe that because of what she is, that she doesn't suffer cold like the rest of us? That is a myth. That's not true. She needs something. Okay? It's going to be warm at the equator, but we've got a few weeks travel and it's going to be cold while we're traveling. She needs something.
And he gives her his coat, right?
Temporarily.
Right.
While the mom goes to get a blanket. She's like, well, I mean, we've got some blankets. And Shafa says nothing, just stares at her. until she gets the idea that she has to go. And this woman's an idiot.
She's dumb and she's mean.
She is dumb and mean. Yeah. Terrible combination.
Really. The worst of it.
So while she's going to get this blanket, that's when Shafa is talking to Damaya about like, no, it's good that you're gonna come with me. I'm guardian to 6. Like, you're in good hands. Yeah. And so Mom comes back with the blanket. He takes his coat back and drapes the blanket around her, mounts her on his horse. He gets on behind her, and then they leave. Oh, before she comes back, she starts crying, and he like sops up her tears and is like, never cry in front of them.
Yeah.
Ever. Just don't do it. Why do you think he says that?
I think that he, it would instill fear in everyone around. Like, oh, she's crying. She's on edge. What is she going to do? That's what I thought.
I think that tracks.
Like, what? Is she going to start a shake, like, or a quake or whatever, you know?
He says, like, this isn't going to be good enough for your mother. She'll probably know that you were crying. But for anyone else, they probably won't know. Never cry in front of others.
Yeah.
It's like, damn. And so then, they get on the horse and they're leaving and he's like, don't look back. And she doesn't. And it makes it easier.
Yeah.
But then it says that later on, she's going to wish that she had.
Ugh. And she's just a baby.
She's just a baby.
That's the thing. So many babies in this book.
And so then the chapter ends with another verse of Stone lore. So it says in brackets, obscured. So it's a snippet of Stone lore. The ice white eyes, the ash blow hair, the filtering nose, the sharpened teeth, the salt split tongue. So ice white isn't referenced in the appendix, but ash blow is. So ash blow hair is a distinctive Sanzid racial trait deemed in the current guidelines of the breeder use caste to be advantageous and therefore given preference in selection. Ash blow hair is notably coarse and thick, generally growing in an upward flare. At length, it falls around the face and shoulders. It is acid resistant and retains little water after immersion, and has been proven effective as an ash filter in extreme circumstances. In most comms, breeder guidelines acknowledge texture alone. However, equatorial breeders generally also require natural ash coloration, slate gray to white, present from birth, for the coveted designation. So, equatorial breeders kind of remind me of kennel club breeders.
Oh, God.
That's the feeling I get.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
It is fucked. And it doesn't get better.
I do like this interesting thing about ash blow hair, though, being something that could be used as a filter. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes me wonder if there's, like, a caste of people with ash blow hair that, like, their job is to just grow their hair out, cut it off, and then grow it more and cut it off again. Kind of like people that, like, grow out their hair for wigs.
Right, and then cut it off
And, yeah. Like, see, that, because that would be cool.
I was going to say, that would be a great job. I would love that. Just sit around and grow my hair out.
Yeah, and so Sanzid, since, it came up, Sanzid is, like, the origins of the Empire. Like, the Sanzid people were the ones that created the Empire, and so now, like, Sanzid racial traits are just, like, everywhere, in everyone. All over the place.
You can't miss them.
But yeah, no, so that's the end of chapter 2. So we're gonna wrap up. What do you think so far?
What do I think so far, based off of just prologue to chapter 2? Okay, so I think that for when I started the prologue, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
I'm the dumbest person with a bachelor's degree, so how am I going to read this? No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally joking.
I gave her a look.
I know. Yeah, it was a joke. Because I am a genius. So I was reading the prologue. I was a little stressed. I was a little concerned. Chapter 1, I'm in it. I'm sold. Like, I think that there's a lot of really great characters, like, right off the bat that I'm immediately invested.
Yeah.
And worried. And I have a lot of concerns for a lot of these characters, and I've loved them. So
Yeah.
I think that that's really cool to be done so early in a book too. Like, you don't always get invested
immediately.
Yes, and in their like livelihood and just like them almost as like people.
Yeah.
So, job well done.
It's a good book. This book got in 2016, it was the winner of the Hugo Award.
That's what the Barnes & Noble lady told me.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is that every book in this series got a Hugo Award.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to read them all.
Maybe we'll do that here.
Oh, looks like that could be a possibility.
Looks like that might be something we'll do.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Okay, anyways, we're going to wrap up. I said in a prior episode I'm going to do credits at the beginning. I keep forgetting, so I'm going to do them at the end here, and I'll do them at the beginning next time. Thank you. Thank you, Julia, for co-hosting with me.
Thank you for just letting me babble.
I'm sure everybody will love it. Thank you, Chris and Digistory Productions. That's where Chris is from, for being our audio recordist. Thank you to Vidwest Studios for providing us a space to record in, as well as most of our equipment. Thank you, Jake Weller, for our theme music. If you like Jake's music, you should check out his album Wasting Time. It's very good. Am I forgetting anybody?
Thank you, Ryan.
Oh, hey, yeah.
For having me on this podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's great.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
I love being thanked. And thank you, Zach, for recording everything that you have with me so far. I'm excited for you to come back after I'm done recording this book with Julia. All right, bye. Hi, this is Functionally Literate. Hope you've been enjoying listening. This episode is brought to you by me. I made this show. I'm Ryan. I'm broke. If you could donate a little money my way with a sponsorship or a product, I'll be a shill for money. And I'm going to use that money with which to buy books, because let me tell you, right now I'm checking stuff out of the library, and it's rough. You can email me at funk.lit.pod@gmail.com. That is FUNC.LIT.POD@gmail.com. You could also be a patron of this podcast. That's right. This podcast, Functionally Literate, we're going places. We have a Patreon now. You can give me $1, and in exchange, you will be able to listen to this podcast ad-free. That means right now, you don't have to listen to this bit. You can listen to the podcast uninterrupted. It just goes without me going on about things that you don't care about. Just for $1. And that will increase in value every 2 weeks, because there will be another ad-free episode. Additionally, if you'd like to just pitch a little money my way, like you're not interested in being a patron, you can go to my PayPal, which is also in there. I made a Funklit PayPal. It'll all be in the description. All the links in the description.